So let's move to the next presenter, Jeppe, professor, this division for transport here at DTU, will present some socio-economic calculations of these supercycle highways. Welcome, Jeppe.
Can it work?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Thanks, Anders. Yes. I will talk about the economic value of supercycle highways. It's work together with Anders and also Ninette. Is she here? No, but she's also been involved actually. And you know, the background is basically that we've done a lot of transport models for the road network and for public transport and all of that, and but we haven't really looked carefully at the socio-economic value of bike infrastructure, and we haven't done that because it's a very different thing to model bike infrastructure. You have to model demand in a specific way, and it's kind of different. But in this project, we have tried to do that and try to sort of dive into what could be the economic value of these projects. And it's actually the project that was just shown by Anna, so it's you should more or less be familiar with that already. So just a little bit about the background. As has been said a few times here, historically, you have, you think of bike trips as being, typically short trips. And probably for that reason, there hasn't been a lot of attention on sort of the wider social welfare perspective related to bike infrastructure. And it's actually also reflected even in the government plan for 2030, where you can see that only 0.7% of the state's infrastructure investments is actually dedicated to bike infrastructure. Despite actually that 40 point something of the journeys are bike trips on a national level, and actually 10% of our travel time is also on a bike. So that sort of doesn't really add up, but that's because many of these investments are then in the municipalities, and that was what Anna also talked about. That gives sort of a bit of a trouble there. Okay, so what is the aim here? So the aim has been to again consider, this bike infrastructure investment from a very broad perspective. And actually trying to extend the previous study by incentives from 2018 in different ways. So firstly, one of the you could say challenges in the incentives report was that the demand side was modeled quite poorly. You could say there was not a demand model as such, and it relied a lot on many simplifying assumptions on the demand side. In this project, we have applied more like a state-of-the-art demand model that has been developed specifically for bike. It has been developed for an OSM network in this region, and it is also linked to a route choice model. It goes too far to dive into that model here, but I will just refer to a paper that is on the submission now that I can share if anyone is interested. Another thing that is a change from the previous report is that now we differentiate between different classes of bicycles. So we actually consider bikes, e-bikes, and speed pedelecs bikes. Of course, the problem is the shares of these bikes is very uncertain, so we have simply superimposed some reasonable shares in the future. And then you could say use that as a condition in the model framework. Of course, looking forward, it would be nice to be able to model those directly, but we haven't enough data for that yet. Then thirdly, in 2020, just 1 week ago, COVI came with new updated unit values for health effects and accidents costs for cyclists. They are has been up scaled quite a bit. So that's also a quite huge change from the previous report. Yeah. And then we simply just do the full-scale cost-benefit analysis with the most ambitious supercycle highway infrastructure, the 2045 plan, with everything in it. Was it 855 kilometers or so? And then we use the most recent Teresa model as well. What is the effect of also considering bike technology? So there are sort of a few opposite effects. That is the reason why we looked at those bicycles. First of all, e-bikes, as you know, will travel faster. So that in itself will actually induce a consumer surplus benefit because you have more travel time savings, all other things equal. And of course, it's even more extreme with the speed pedelecs bicycles. Then, of course, to some extent, you could say bicycle technology and infrastructure is also interconnected. It's quite obvious that supercycle highways, as we just heard, which are going for the longer trips, is more direct and primarily also focused on commuting, is likely to benefit the faster bikes relatively more. So that's why it's also necessary to when you develop a supercycle highway, you have to also consider the e-bike perspective here. And then different bike technologies do actually have different safety and health effects. So it's like that e-bikes, you can ride with less effort. So because of that, you don't earn the same health effects. On the other hand, they are also a bit more dangerous because you go at a faster speed. So put together all of these elements, some of them point in one direction, some point in another direction. So the net, you could say, net effect is sort of uncertain. So but that's why it's interesting to look at them. And then a bit about the literature. There's a lot of literature on that sort of basically inform that bicycle infrastructure does have an effect on the bicycle demand. There's quite a few Dutch studies. You also have quite firm evidence that travel speed can be affected by infrastructure and also the route choice. And I think Anna also referred to studies in Denmark where there's been looked at supercycle highways, which can definitely attract more users and different users and also lead to longer trips, as we heard it. Okay, so then back to this cost-benefit study by incentives. It was actually a pretty complete cost-benefit study of these supercycle highways. Demand was not properly modeled, meaning that the consumer surplus was uncertain. Calculations was based on these external costs, which has recently been updated. But overall conclusion was that this investment was pretty solid. It was beneficial up to an internal rent of 11%, which is quite impressive if you compare with other infrastructure investments. Here I just show you the new external cost estimates. I hope I got the right ones. Otherwise, Thomas can correct me. But they are based on this new recent COVID report from just a week ago, I think. And what you see is that there's a significant increase in the health benefit and sort of more moderate changes in the accident costs. It's based on recent literature, Foyle 18, Foyle et al. 2019. So one of the, you could say, key assumptions here is that, and that's actually based on the literature, is that there is no substitution of physical activity. I think that actually contradicts a little bit what Anna said. So here it's assumed that you don't sort of, if you go by bike, you don't do less other exercise. That's a critical, you could say, assumption here. But in this project, we have just used the official values here, and but of course, this is thing you could consider. We have also done a bit of checking. We have checked with this something called heat, where you can actually check the same number, and we got pretty much the same values by using the newest heat model. But again, there's not a lot of studies to compare with, and this is for sure an area that needs more research. Yeah, just a comment here. In order to, we've also done our calculations with the previous Teresa model, and in order to go back, we have used the same share because there were no e-bikes in the old model. It's just a comment. Okay. So this is the scenario analysis. We have a base network to the left and this extended scenario 3 network to the right. And you can see there's some radial routes, and there's a route to Roskilde. Turned actually out to be very important because, yeah, you see a lot of benefits anchored to that route. And there's also another important route that is on crossing the harbor. So that is actually also by making it very easy to go from Amager to north of Copenhagen. These two are the sort of the most beneficial add-ins to, yeah. Okay, and we have taken the cost and maintenance estimates from the previous report. I think they were also based on estimates which has been cleared with the Super Cycle Secretariat. Just show some main number here. I mean, it was based on different category of routes and links. Then on the bike technology scenarios, we actually in the previous study, we had a lot of different technology scenarios. But in this case, we've chosen two. We've chosen an M2 here, which sort of represent the baseline how it looks today with see 10% electric bicycles and a tiny share of speed pedelecs bicycles. And then we have considered also an M5, which is more aggressive with 70% conventional bikes, 25% e-bikes, and 5% speed pedelecs. And as I said, I mean, this is embedded in a discrete choice model with choice of mode, destination, and choice of route, but it's, we assume sort of a fastest route in this bicycle network. But we do consider intersections, so we have a penalty at intersections, and we impose these speeds, these speed assumptions from the different bicycle technologies, and combine that also with the infrastructure. So you go faster on A-graded infrastructure such as supercycle highways, and slower on conventional infrastructure. Yeah. Okay. Yes. And now to the results. So these are still the preliminary results because, yeah, we're still diving into this, but it's kind of pretty close to be final, I would say. So what is the important thing here? The important thing, if you can skip the construction cost and maintenance cost and all that, because that's largely similar to what we've been seeing previously. The user benefits is actually not so different from the previous study, but what is really kicking off here is the health effects, and you can see if you use the old values, these health effects, we get an internal rent which largely reproduce the numbers in the incentives report, actually pretty close. But if we use a new health effect, we get a very high internal rate of return, like 28% in the maximum case. Conclusion. I would say that maybe this is not exactly correct. I think there has been some understanding that bicycle infrastructure project was probably good investments, but there were some issues in the way demand was modeled. But I would say based on this work, we can actually sort of support what was found previously using some similar assumptions. Namely an internal rate of return of 8 to 11%, which is a really good project. But with the new updated values for health, this internal rent increases to 25 to 28%, which is an extremely good project. So this suggests that it's very important to increase the research activities in this area, to examine these external values maybe even more carefully, optimize the infrastructure further. I mean, maybe this is even not optimal. Maybe it could be designed in a better way, and also integrate e-bikes and the infrastructure specifically. And then for sure analyze demand effect and substitution effects even more carefully, because even though we have done probably better than was there before, there's still a lot of uncertain things in all of this. Yeah, and then finally, maybe also consider the role of the state in this, because if these projects are so good as we see here, then maybe the state should take a more active role and not let it up to the municipalities only. Yeah, that was it.
Great. Thank you, Jeppe. We do not have any comments on the. Yeah. So one question here from Jeppe, according on this model, what are the comparable rents of returns for other infrastructure projects? That's actually my comment. So I think most highway projects in Jylland are there around 4% or something.
I just asked Thomas that question. Yeah. Actually, he's also here. I think normally we would say public transport projects is having a low rent, like maximum 4%.
4% for public transport projects. I'm just repeating.
And the car project, the motorway project is higher, but I don't think you will find many projects over 10%, right, Thomas?
Rarely highway road construction projects with above 10%, Thomas says, from the Danish Road Directorate.
Intersections are different.
Intersections can be higher. Okay, great. Thanks a lot. Again to Jeppe, and then